Hi there, hope you're having a lovely day so far. Well, social isolation has placed so much of our lives on hold and meant that the flow of life is just stopped, which is for the short term anyway. But one thing that won't stop for anything is the growth and the development of our babies and our children. Now, if you're at home wondering how you can make sure that your children's gross motor skills continue to develop as they should over the next several months, well, you're definitely in the right place. Now, today we are joined by our special guest, Emily Hayles. Now, she's a principal physiotherapist and owner at Move and Play Paediatric Therapy. Now, Emily is also the author of this fantastic book, and I'll have to lift it up, Braver Than You Think, How to Help Your Child with a Disability Live Their Best Life. Now, Move and Play Paediatric Therapy is a children's physiotherapy service based in Mackay, and their aim is to help children, families, schools and communities to support children's development and to help children and their families live a happy and connected lives. Thank you so much for joining us today, Emily. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Oh, it's a real honour, and thanks again for your time. And look, and no doubt there's parents right throughout Australia at the moment with like limited or no access to occupational therapists at the moment, and the parents may be concerned about their child's development. So I'd love to know your thoughts on this to begin with.
Yeah, sure. I guess all of the social distancing rules has meant that we're not leaving our houses as much. We're sort of staying indoors, and several services have shut as well. But I guess what's reassuring for parents to know is that most therapy services are still running, particularly paediatric therapy services. So whether that be physio, OT, speech, psychology, most of us are still running. Some are 100% online, so delivering online therapy instead of face-to-face, or others are delivering a bit of both, depending on what the circumstances are in their local area with the COVID-19 virus. Mm-hmm. So there's help available still.
Yeah, and I'd love to be able to just establish for anyone watching that maybe isn't completely clear what an occupational therapist is. So to begin with, could you just please clarify from your point of view what an OT actually is?
Yeah, sure. So I guess what I'll do is I'll juxtaposition a physio and OT. They're actually similar but different. So I'm a physio, that's my background, my profession. We look at how children move. So we look at how children move in their environments. And I guess the purpose for moving is to do something, which is why physios might become involved in children and helping them to move. And OT, on the other hand, looks at all of the occupations of children, which is really broad because the occupations of a child might be to play, to look after themselves or learn to look after themselves, such as dressing and feeding, to participate as a family member, to get along and have friendships, to go to school and to learn. So an occupational therapist can be involved in all of those areas of that child's daily life. And I guess the OT or the occupational therapist will work to support the child to best function or best achieve those occupations in their life through either supporting them to learn to do skills differently or to learn to do skills better or to have strategies in place so that they can manage in their everyday lives.
Okay.
So that's generally an OT, yeah. So
from your point of view, why would a parent need to take their child to see an occupational therapist or a physio? Yeah, sure. So from a physio point of view, it's probably a little bit narrower. Physios help children to move better or to support them if they're not moving as we would expect them to. So sometimes you might see a physio because your child is not developing as you expect them to. Maybe they're not crawling or walking when you would expect them to. Other times it might be because their balance is a bit off, or they're a bit clumsy, or their coordination is not as good as their peers and they're kind of falling behind in their sports or their play activities. Yep. Or another reason for children, for physios, is if they're experiencing pain or they've had an injury or they've got a disability of some sort and they need to learn to move better. From an OT point of view, basically if the child is having difficulty with achieving a task or an activity in their life, whether that be some of those things we talked about, dressing, washing, feeding, handwriting, playing, taking turns, going to school, any of those daily activities, if your child's having a difficulty with that, an OT is someone who can help you to problem solve why is that child having difficulty with that and what can we do to help them.
So really, it's broad for OTs, and if you just think if there's something that your child's having difficulty with, it's possible that an OT could help in some way.
So from your point of view, when should parents really consider taking their child to see an occupational therapist or a physio?
I think as soon as you are worried about something that your child's either doing or not doing as you would expect them to, I guess the sooner you can get help, the sooner you can either reassure yourself that actually what you're seeing is fine, because even though children follow typical patterns, there's variations in how children develop. So it might just give you reassurance that yes, my child's going okay. I don't need to be worried about this. Or alternatively, it could be, look, I'm a bit worried about my child's development, and then you can get some tips really early on to help your child to either catch up or to progress at a rate that's going to allow them to keep up with their peers and not fall behind. So really, as soon as you're worried about how your child's moving or doing an activity, that would be a time to start thinking about seeing a physio or an OT.
And do you have any tips for parents who are or are possibly hesitant to take their child to see a therapist in general?
Yeah, sure. I guess the main thing probably for parents to realise is that we're not going to look for problems. We're not, physios, OTs, paediatricians, any health professional is not going to tell you that there's something wrong if it's not there. Best case scenario, you take your child to see an OT, physio, or another health professional, and they tell you that, do you know what? Yes, I can see what you're worried about, but what you're actually seeing is typical development. That's totally normal for babies to do that. And your child is showing us that they're doing all of the normal things that we would expect a child of their age to do. On the other side, if there is something going on, the sooner you can get help for your child, the sooner that they can kind of catch up or improve. So there's not really any negative about going to see a therapist like an OT or physio. There really is only gain that can be made, either your reassurance or help for your child. So I would suggest that there's no reason to be worried about that. And some tips, I guess, if you're worried about not being able to get your point across to the therapist that you're seeing, would be to, write down your concerns. So that way you've got something to read off to the health professional you're seeing. And then also videos are great. So sometimes when a child comes into a clinic environment, what they do is different to what they do at home. And so it is sometimes helpful for a parent to have videos to show the therapist what's happening at home. And then that way we can use that to kind of add to the picture that we see in the clinic, and therefore understand where you're coming from with your concerns.
Yep. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, we published your article titled Activities to Support Your Child's Gross Motor Skills While at Home During COVID-19. For a parent who hasn't read the article yet, could you please give us a quick overview of what it's about and what inspired you to write it?
Sure. I guess I'm one of those parents who are at home not doing all that much at the moment. And I know as a mum how you can worry about your child's development. So what I wanted to do is just to show parents that there are lots of things that you can already do at home that don't take any special equipment, that don't take any special tools or tricks, that you can help to support your child's development. We often think, when we're thinking about how am I going to get my child to develop, we think about, I need to get this different toy or this different piece of equipment that's going to help them. But the reality is we've got heaps of stuff at home that we can use to help our child to develop. And I guess that's a philosophy that we try and adopt in our clinic as well, because there's no point a child coming to us for an appointment and for us to show them a fancy activity they can do with this special piece of equipment when they go home. There's no way the parents can replicate that. So I'm really passionate about making sure parents realise that they've got all the tools they need at their fingertips to help their child. It's just how you use them for those different activities.
Yeah, well, parents really would be surprised and relieved by reading the list of things you've got in your article, that the tools that they actually need to support their child's gross motor developments are already within their reach and around the house. Could you just give us just a few examples, because there's a great long list, but just a couple examples that you actually have in that list?
Yep, sure. I guess my two favourites would be towels. Towels are so versatile. So towels can be used to for when your baby's really little. You can roll the towel up and put the towel on the ground, and you can pop your baby over on their tummy on the towel, and they can practice lifting their head up. Yep. As your baby gets older, you can use a towel under their tummy to kind of hold them up when they're in a crawling position, when they're not quite strong enough to hold themselves, but you can use that towel to hold them up, and you can help them to crawl in that position. And my other favourite, I guess you can also use towels for when children are first starting to step as well. So if you hold a towel out like it's a stick, and then your baby holds onto the towel, you can then help them to take some of their first steps holding on by holding onto the towel, keeping it out straight. My second favourite is a laundry basket, actually. So a laundry basket is great for when you're teaching your child to sit. So if you pop your baby at one end of the laundry basket, they're surrounded by the laundry basket on kind of, 2/3 of the sides. And so that will stop them from toppling in that 2/3 directions. If it's really early days and your baby's not even holding themselves upwards and they're still falling forwards, you can put a pillow in front, and that means that they'll only fall forward as far as the pillow, and then they can bring themselves back up to the laundry tub behind the laundry basket behind them. And then as your baby gets older, it's a kind of a nice place where you can put some toys in front of them. They can reach forwards and come back upright, and then they can also practice dropping the toy outside the basket so that they're practicing that grasping and releasing activity as well. They're two of my favourites on that list. There's a fair few others, but they're probably the ones I like the most.
Yeah. And why do you think it's so important for babies and children to develop and work on their gross motor skills?
Yeah. Well, I guess my view is that movement is what allows us to explore our world. So when babies are tiny and they can't move, they're really dependent on us for all of their choices, for all of their learning experiences, for all of their interactions. But then as they start to learn to move, that's what gives them the opportunity to explore the world. They can go and find that toy that's in the corner and feel what that toy feels like. They can make the choice that they can go and find that toy, or they can make the choice that they don't actually want to go and see that toy. They can go and see another toy that they would prefer to see. That is what gives us such power with movement, is the ability to use movement for choice making and for interactions and for exploration, because that's how babies learn. So that's why, as a physio, as a clinic owner, I'm really passionate about giving children opportunities to learn to move independently. And I guess in our caseload, that's typically developing children who do end up learning to crawl and walk, but it's also children with disabilities who maybe they won't learn to crawl and walk, but we can give them ways to do that using special equipment or, I guess, different walking devices and things like that.
So how do you actually help parents and families to develop their kids' motor skills at home then?
Yep. So I guess we partner with parents. We don't perceive ourselves to be the experts. We have knowledge about how children develop and what tools and tricks we can use to support them, but parents know their kids better than anyone else. And so we partner with parents to find out from the parents what's happening at home, what the child is doing, what tools they have at home, and then we combine that with our knowledge about child development and how to support children's development. And we give parents the tools, we coach the parents, we provide them with strategies and tips so that then they can continue whatever we've started in the clinical space at home. And the purpose behind that is, if you do a 1-hour therapy session a week, or even if you were to do, let's say you were doing a block of therapy where you did one session every day for 5 days, that's 5 hours out of the whole week. The amount of carryover of 5 hours is good, but it's not as good as if they then practice those same activities at home with mum and dad. You can imagine that 1 hour of therapy can turn into 15 hours of therapy if mum and dad have the time and the tools and the knowledge on how to practice that at home. So that's what we do, is support families to know how they can support their children and to be able to do that in their home environment.
So how can therapy and or developmental activities be made part of everyday life then, so they can take it from a part of having their therapy sessions and then integrating it into their day-to-day life?
Mm-hmm. Something we talk to parents about is, I guess, building it into daily routines. So every day we have to eat our meals, we have to brush our teeth, we have to get dressed, we have to do our hair. There's routine activities that we do every day that we can't get out of for our own well-being. So picking those activities and then building therapy activities into those everyday activities. So, for example, if your child needs to work on some standing balance or learning to stand up by themselves, you might choose to do some standing just before they brush their teeth. So that way, every day you know that when they stand up, they brush their teeth, they are practicing standing for however many minutes you can fit in there. It could be that what I talk to parents of little babies about is, if you want to practice tummy time, my best tip would be every single time you put the baby down, put them on their tummy. So, if you're going to change their nappy, put them on their tummy first, wait the few minutes that they last, then roll them over, change their nappy. If you're going to put them on the ground because you need to go hang out the washing, put them on their tummy first. When they have had enough, then roll them onto their back. Because what that means is that every single time you put them down, which is maybe 10, 15 times in a day, they're practicing tummy time as part of that routine. It's about building little habits into the daily routine that includes some kind of therapeutic activity. So then it's not like you're having to add therapy to everything you're doing in the day. You're doing therapy as part of your daily routine anyway.
And so it's integrated into, as you said, those daily things that we're already doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd love to know what developmental issues you have found that parents are most concerned about currently at the moment, in the middle of the COVID-19 era at the moment.
Yeah. I guess I can talk to two sets of parents here. So our clients who we see at Move and Play, they're certainly worried about not being able to access therapy the same way they otherwise would. We're not doing as much face-to-face at the moment because that's the best way we can manage risk around the virus. And I guess there's some worry that the child will receive a different type of therapy, or even some parents will be concerned about they'll be receiving less therapy. What I can say to that is I totally agree. Online therapy or telehealth is definitely different to face-to-face, but it is also an opportunity. So when you come to a clinic session, the therapist typically is working directly with your child, and so the therapist will be doing the therapy with your child, whereas in a telehealth or an online therapy session, you'll be doing the therapy with your child. The therapist acts as a coach, and so in actual fact, you'll be learning heaps of new skills that you'll then be able to carry on in your everyday life to support your child to do the therapy that they need to do. So there's opportunities either way. The second set of parents I'm thinking about are those parents of typically developing kids who don't necessarily need to see a physio or OT usually. And I guess what they're worried about is the lack of, or the decreased opportunity to participate in outdoor gross motor playground type activities, as well as social interactions. So, if the kids aren't going to school, or if they're not going to daycare and they're staying at home, they're not seeing grandparents, they're not seeing neighbours, there's less opportunity for those little kids to practice social interactions. So they're the things that I think parents of typically developing children are worried about. I think, again, that's probably one of the reasons I wrote the article is I think in the current circumstances, we just have to think a bit creatively. So what can we find in our own backyards or in our local neighbourhoods that allow children to still practice climbing and jumping and running and riding their bike and playing with balls and doing team type activities? What can we do in our own backyards that will allow that? And then how can we make sure that our children practice social skills in our home environments? And that might be through this kind of an online conversation. It could also be just having more direct interaction time with mum and dad. We can usually get out of that because we're going to work and we're, busy visiting other people, but maybe having that one-to-one time practicing turn taking or practicing back and forth communication with kids is how we have to manage that for this period in our life at the moment.
So for the children that are in need of an occupational therapist but are unable to see one at the moment, and this is a hard question to ask, but
in your opinion, will the lack of face-to-face appointments affect children in their development? And if so, really, what can parents be doing to prevent this from happening?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess my hope would be that no, it won't affect their development. In saying that, though, there's definitely going to be kids who are going to find telehealth harder. So that's the reality of, sometimes interaction via a video is going to be more difficult for some kids. So I think for the large majority of children, receiving physio and OT via telehealth is going to be okay, and it's going to continue to support their development. There's lots of research available that shows that receiving online therapy or telehealth versus receiving usual therapy, which is typically face-to-face, the outcomes are similar. And for some children, outcomes can be better because they actually cope better with the online version of therapy. And reasons for that could be because they don't have to leave the house, that they don't have to deal with that transition, getting in and out of the car and going to a clinic environment, which might be more noisy, less familiar, more uncomfortable for them. And then also for some kids with ASD, potentially, autism, potentially interacting over a computer is easier for them to do than with a person face-to-face.
So it may actually benefit some children as opposed to...
Yeah. And look, our experience has been that we've had some kids who've done so well with telehealth. We are, as anxious as parents are, introducing this to all of our clients. We've done telehealth for kids who live long distances away. But for our clients who we've seen face-to-face for years, it is a little bit anxiety-provoking doing a different type of therapy. But we've had some kids who've done really, really, really well, and we're still achieving positive outcomes for families where they're achieving new motor milestones. They're, playing with food for the first time. They're, they're learning to sit by themselves, all sorts of different milestones that they're still achieving, even though we're not doing that hands-on face-to-face stuff.
Yeah.
So I can understand the anxiety, but I'm hopeful, and the evidence shows that, generally speaking, therapy over online services is okay and equivalent to face-to-face, and sometimes better.
Sometimes, just depending on the child and their needs.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, the article itself does list some wonderful ideas, and I think a major take-home from this chat today is how parents can integrate those tools into their day-to-day life. And as you said, it's not for them to be able to add this onto their list to say, well, now we need to be able to focus on our OT stuff. It's about how can we integrate that into what we're already doing, what the children already have to do as part of their development.
Yeah.
But I'd love to speak about this for a moment. Tell me about...
Yes. Well, I wrote that book. I published it in October last year. Yep. And I guess my reason behind writing the book was to give parents a framework or a model. So parents of children with disability, giving them a framework or a model on how they can help their child. I guess I can talk what the BRAVER stands for, the BRAVE model. And so that each of the letters of the word BRAVE stands for a different, a different aspect of how you can help your child to live their best life. So being aware and getting help early, recognising your child's needs. And I guess what that means is understanding that your child has strengths as well as difficulties, and then also recognising that all of the child's needs across all different areas impact each other. And so you need to understand their needs and address their needs across all areas and not just one thing. Yeah. Assisting your child but not insisting. So what that means is helping them to be as independent as you possibly can, but not insisting that they do things in a certain way, being okay with accepting assistance. So that might be assistive technology or specialised equipment. Validating your child. So that's about helping your child to develop a sense in themselves, a strong sense of their identity, and understanding what their place is in the world. And then E is about empowering families and parents. So obviously a child exists within the circle that is their family, and so parents need to be able to be empowered and look after themselves and look after each other so that they can help their child. And what the book does is go through each of those aspects of helping your child to be the best they can, and giving parents tips and tools and strategies how they can understand those various different aspects and how they can apply that to their child.
This is brilliant. So if parents want to get a copy of this, whereabouts can they find?
Yeah, they can get that from our website. So our website is www.moveplaypeedtherapy. So it's MOVEPLAYPAED therapy, THERAPY.com.au.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe easier would be to Google Move and Play Paediatric Therapy. It's a website that's a mouthful. It's also available on Booktopia and Amazon, so you can search for it at those two search engines and purchase it there as well.
All right, perfect. It's been a really great chat. If parents have got any other questions for you and or want to sort of reach you in any other way, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yep. Either our website, like I said before, and we're also on Facebook and Instagram. So if you search for us there, you'll find us there.
Awesome. Really enjoyed the chat today, Emily, and really look forward to speaking with you again soon. Take care.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Thanks.
Bye.